Hey everyone, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. And this week I am so excited for my guest. It's someone I've known for a very long time, and she is absolutely fabulous. She's doing some big things out there in the corporate sector, and her name is Judy Ryan. Judy, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your invitation. And it's fun just to hang out with you.
I know, and get to see you again. So I'm going to do a quick introduction. She's got a lot of great things that she has done. And so I really don't want to gloss over this part. So Judy is the CEO of Lifework Systems, and she's a recognized thought leader on applied behavior science that impacts deep culture change for exceptional outcomes. She's an award-winning author. She's a columnist, a systems developer, trainer, keynote speaker, and she is frequently interviewed on TV, radio, and podcast. Since 2002, Judy has been leading innovation methods to favorably impact the most important aspect of any organization, its people. And she's created digital, scalable culture transformation systems and implementation framework. We'll talk more about what that all means.
Yeah.
And Judy's purpose, and I love this purpose, is to create a culture in which all people love their lives. I would have to say I'm right there with you. So Judy, I'm so excited to have you here. So thank you again for being here.
You're welcome. And you know what? I appreciate you loving that mission, because I remember marketing people in the past saying to me, oh, you can't tell business owners they need to give a darn about whether their people love their lives. And I said, well, that's not the people I want to work with then.
Yeah. I love that you're saying that, because I was just having a conversation with one of my clients this morning, and we were talking about employee retention and what, companies are struggling right now. A lot of people are leaving and they're creating their own businesses, and retention is becoming a big problem. And one of the things that can keep people in an organization longer is when people love their lives, they love their job, they're happy, right? They have no reason to leave. And how many employers don't think about that, or are not taking the steps or the actions to ensure that people are loving their lives? They love coming to work every day. And I think that that's where the shift is going to have to happen. It is now an employee's world, not an employer's world. And I think people have to realize that.
Couldn't agree more. I think a lot of leaders either were blind to what it's costing them, and it's costing their people, but they're also really starting to recognize that it is affecting their bottom line for those that are all driven by the profitability. And then I think what would be great is when they start to experience the shift, because even though Great Resignation is called the Great Resignation, it's also called the Great Reset. And I like to think of it that way, because what if it's time? It gives us the space and the circumstances so that we choose to reset. And then maybe some of these leaders that thought it was sort of a nice to have their people happy, start realizing it's pretty great to have us all be happy, and then it becomes a winning, way.
No, and I think you're spot on in that. And I think that really if people, even if they are profit driven, which companies are, right, and businesses, you said it so well. They don't even have any idea what it's costing them. And it really does affect the bottom line. And even just thinking about turnover, I've dealt with a lot of businesses, where they've had turnover. And I can remember saying to one of my clients at one time, so what kind of training do you do for your people? Or how do you help them grow as people and be happy? And he said, well, we don't really invest in that kind of thing. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, what if I put out all that money and then they just leave? And I said, well, let's reverse that. What if you don't do it and they stay with you? Are those the people you want working with you?
It's like it's natural for you to see that. Like that's what's going to get them to stay. Not investing in them is more likely to have them leave. Yeah,
absolutely. And so I love what you're doing. So how did you, Judy, you've been doing this since 2002, which is quite a run. How did you get into this originally? And I know that we know business evolves. So I know that you're in a completely different place now than when you were in 2002. But can you share a little bit of your journey and your story with us?
Yeah. I mean, I feel really lucky that I've kind of always had a passion for this work, and I actually got started in it in the mid '80s, which is going to really tell
Oh,
people how
well.
old I am. I was in my 20s back then, so it was important to me because I came upon a psychology model that not only helped me raise my children, but it also helped me heal my own childhood. And I would have to say, most people think I have a pretty normal childhood, but all of us have had various ways that we've been conditioned because of the way that we believe in how to raise children, how to educate them, how to build a workforce, that are really pretty harmful to all of us. And a lot of people aren't recognizing that. So I learned about this model and I applied it in my early years as a parent educator. So that's how I applied the psychology then. And then in 1998, I quit a pretty lucrative career to go out on my own and do this work.
Mhm.
And I did it under someone else's company for about 3 years until I was ready to go out on my own and do my own version of, what I was doing. So I feel fortunate that I've always had this passion to stop people from suffering. A lot of people are suffering right now. It's very evident. It's almost like we're
Oh,
a alcoholic that needs to hit bottom all the way.
mhm.
It's kind of disappointing that we have to have so much suffering for people to start going, we really need to change. Um,
Yes.
but I feel like I've been kind of out ahead of something, preparing for it. And one of the things that I want to keep in mind that you want in this conversation is to help people that are trying to find their next steps,
Mhm.
find their way through. And I would say one of the most important things that someone can do is to really be clear about what at their highest level they want to cause. Like I
Mhm.
called it mission, create a world where people love their lives. If you know what that is, then you can start aligning your values and your visions with that. And then you will see that your visions start just coming true without even getting to how am I going to make that vision come true. Like
Right.
I remember in the early days, one of my visions, because I had done all this in parenting, was to have what if I could help parents and their teachers would also know this, and the students would know this, and the
Mhm.
neighborhood would know this, and the principal and this counselor would know this. And so I wrote down a vision that I wanted to do it in that way as one of my visions. Before I could even set any goals or anything, somebody from a school district said, "What would you do if money was no issue?" And I was like, "Oh, I already wrote that down." Next thing I know, she hands me an application for $300,000 grant and says, "This is due in 2 days. I love what you just said. Write it down. If I like it, I'll sign off on it." Now, I know that sounds like I'm talking crazy, but I really believe there's power when our purpose, our values, and our vision are all lined up. And I can tell you
I
multiple
totally
stories
agree.
like that. Yeah. So I would say that's number one. And a lot of
Mhm.
people kind of look at that as, oh, that just sounds all airy fairy. It's not airy fairy. It's
No, it
very,
is not.
yeah. So that
No,
would be my number one.
I love that you're talking about that because I've worked with, I work with a lot of coaches and consultants to help them structure their business and be successful in their business. And the one thing that I see over and over again, in fact, my last book I wrote about this, is that people are not aligned with what they're really good at, their expertise, the things that light them up, the things that make them happy. I believe that passion is great. You need more than passion, right? It still has to be a viable product or a viable service that people want. But what I see a lot of times is when people aren't successful, and you said it at the very beginning, and it might have even been in our conversation before we started recording about pushing a boulder up a hill. If you're not
Yeah.
working where your values, everything is aligned, there's no ease to it. It is like a constant struggle.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that it really is not woo woo. There's real truth to it. And I think that the other thing is when you said it too, when you know what that vision is or where you really want to go or what you want to accomplish, your subconscious mind really does start working towards that. That's
Totally.
been proven. So
Yeah.
so everything you're saying is so spot on and it's so true.
What's interesting about it though is we teach how to create your purpose, values, and visions is one of our modules in our
Mhm.
12-month program. And that's the month that everybody pushes back the hardest. And I really am convinced that part of it is because there's a quote by Marianne Williamson: our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It's our light,
Mm.
not our darkness, that most frightens us. And it goes on to
Mhm.
a really beautiful conclusion. But I really see that in people. I see people terrified to discover their purpose because they feel like it's too hard to, like, what if I fail at it?
Mhm.
The reality is when we are our best selves, we automatically cause that purpose. It's not like we have to even, it's not effortful. I remember one time my own coach asked me, "Are you loving your life?" And in
Mhm.
that moment, there were two ways that I realized I wasn't. One was that I was not healthy the way I wanted to be. And I've
Mhm.
done a whole lot around that. Like I turned around diabetes. I lost a bunch of weight. I got some more to go, but I was able to get off of 5 medications down to one. Like
That's
those are things
amazing. Good for you.
but I wrote that vision and it didn't happen overnight. I almost had to go to my own bottom where I got diabetes and I was like, hell no, sorry.
Mhm. Yeah, I said I want this to be organic and real.
Okay, well, there's me. But the other thing I realized was I don't like prospecting. Like I
Mhm.
realized that when I go to these conferences and things that I was going to at that time, I don't want to be looking around the room going, who am I supposed to convert here? So I remember my coach saying, well, why don't you fire yourself from that? And I was like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. So I did. And I felt it literally like a person that had been let out of jail.
Mhm.
And the very next time I went to a conference, I said to the group, because it was on intrinsic motivation, and I said, intrinsic motivation is loving what you do and who you are while you're doing it. And I told them about this, thing about not loving being a prospector. And I said, so just all of you guys know, if you want something from me, you're going to have to come to me to get it because I'm not going to be hunting you down. Like that's kind of it. And I think I got 3 new clients out of that
Mhm.
crowd because my own energy was so released from, oh, I don't have to do that. And what resulted instead is I've discovered that I really love doing things in partnership. So
Mhm.
that I always say to people that are my partners, you're like the people that love to mingle at the party. I'm the doctor in the corner that you send people over to so that when it comes to mingling, I'm like, I just freeze up. I
You
don't.
you bring up such a good point too, and that is to really work in your strengths and work in the things
Mm,
that you do love. And there are certain things that drain our energy, and then there are other things that pour into our energy.
yeah.
And again, it's not woo woo. We're talking real stuff here,
Real
and
stuff. Yeah.
it's like when you work with a client that just drains you, or you
Mhm.
work with a client that you leave and you're energized and you're pumped and you're so excited, and people know the difference, right? So I think everything you're saying is really helpful for people to realize if there's something you don't like, if there's something that drains you or just doesn't, it's just, again, pushing that boulder up the hill. Then you don't have to do it. You can outsource it. You can give it to, you can bring someone else in. And that's an important piece of growing a business. We don't have to be phenomenal at everything. Now you have to bring in the right people,
I
but
would
you
even
don't have to
say
be.
all of us need people that we can lean on who help us see our blind spots because
Yes.
even though I knew my purpose was to create a world where all people love their lives, and I knew that included me, I wasn't remembering to say, am I loving my life lately?
Mm-hmm.
So having someone else remind me of that. So having a purpose is so helpful because it allows us to self-reflect
Mm-hmm.
or to reflect on if I'm getting ready to write a nasty response to somebody, if I'm not saying in my head, is this going to make you love your life? Is this going to make them love their life? That's going to inform me about what I do next. So it is so not woo woo, but it's great to talk to you who believes in it. I just hope your audience says, oh, I want to check that out because it is nothing to skip over.
Right. No, it's such an important part of success, I believe. And it's also, but to that point, it's also one of the reasons why sometimes people don't get out of their own way when they're growing a business. So there's a difference in coaching and doing what we love to do and in growing a business, right?
Mhm.
And so let's talk about that a little bit, because a lot of times people love what they do so much, but that's all they want to do. And so that is not going to help them be successful probably in the long run, or it's not sustainable. You really do have to think like you're in business, and you have to think like a business owner, unless you're just trying to make a little bit of an income. But you've been at this since 2002. You're successful. I remember, I hope, if you don't want me to say this on this podcast, I will clip this part. But I remember us having a conversation one time and you talking about getting an $800,000 client. And that was so great to hear, because so often people stay in this very small mindset that big clients aren't out there. Of course, I help people get, big clients. And that was one of the things that I loved about what you said, because I think that shows people the possibilities and what is out there. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, one thing that I want to speak on that you said is, you have to think like a business person. You have to understand what a business needs. So I'd like to just hit on that a little bit, because I kind of believe two things. I believe what you're saying 100%, but I also believe that there are places where it isn't our strength.
Mhm.
So hold a vision for those things coming in where you don't have them and you can't see how to get them. So
Mhm.
for example, one of my visions that I wrote for my business back in around 2014 was that I wanted to create an online training center, because I wanted my company to have scalable products and services that could really impact a lot of people. Like, that was how big my vision was in my own mind. And I thought, well, the only way I can do that is replicate what
Mhm.
I'm doing in a lot of different parts of what I'm doing, and then find people to be the mini me's, so that it's not all
Right.
dependent on me. And I wrote a vision for that. I wrote a vision for what the online center would be and what I needed for it and all of that. And before I could figure that out, a similar thing happened, like I said, about that $300,000 grant. And by the way, the $800,000 thing was also another thing that fulfilled that school reform vision that I
Mhm.
had. Both of those, I'm a for-profit company, so I'm not even supposed to get grant money, so I just think things happen in ways that we could never foresee.
Mhm.
So when I wrote my vision for my online center, at that time, I didn't know how I was going to, get the modules made or any of it.
Mhm.
And so what I did was, I happened to be putting in for different interns through internships.com, which I would highly recommend that anybody listening to this looks into. And it's internships with an S. And they're more than welcome to reach out to me if they need to know, how the heck did you fill this thing out? Because it's a little bit complicated at first.
Mhm.
But I've had so many. One time I had 9 interns and somebody in one of the intern roles managing the other interns. That's how crazy it is. And sometimes you find really great ones. Like, the one that came in for my online training center was a 42-year-old woman who had already been doing online training modules, but her company would not let her use the ones she'd already built in her portfolio because she wanted to go out on her own. So here's a very mature person that had experience. She also had instructional design experience. And she helped build out all my initial modules and taught me how to do them so that I could make modifications and all of that. I mean, who would have ever known that would have happened? And then when I was in a position where I was doing a live program one day, and I got invited to do a retreat, and then I'm at this retreat thinking it's a little bitty small company because it's only about 8 women all wearing blue jeans at a little condo in Branson.
Mhm.
I've done my homework on the company. At the end of the day, it was a company that had been bought out by another company. So they were suffering. A lot of companies that are acquired or merged, there's a lot of stress in those kind of
Yes.
scenarios. So they were under a lot of duress. And at the end of this long, day, the senior vice president of operations comes up to me. She was the top person there, and she says, "This is exactly what we need. How do we do this for 1,200 people?" And I'm telling you, my internal jaw dropped to the floor, because I did not know that they were a really big company.
Mhm.
Bigger than even that. They were about 18,000. And I said, "Well, funny that you should say that. I just wrote this vision. I didn't even have the center built then." And I said, "Would you like to see this vision that we have for how it's going to all be laid out?" And she said, "Absolutely." And so working with that company, with the executives, is what funded our whole initial build of our online center. And I say that to you because, again, I wasn't trying to be all things to all people. I
Mhm.
was putting my vision out there, and the people started showing up.
I
And
love it.
so, and sometimes they've shown up from internships, sometimes they've shown up from other sources, but
Mm.
um,
I love it. And this is one thing that people need to realize too, is that you said what it was you wanted, you put that vision in place, but then you didn't hang on one second. One of the things that I love about what you said too, and I think it can be a real eye opener for people, is that things evolve and we don't often know how things are going to happen, where they're going to go. And there's always like the sequence of events that get us to a completely different place. So I love that you had the vision, but you had no idea how that would happen and, where that would come from. And I think that part of that is being really open in your business. I think you have to be open to receive. I think you have to be open-minded for where things, will go and not be so rigid that you don't ever expand and you don't ever grow.
Here with you. I think a lot of people are even afraid to write a vision down because they
Mhm.
feel like, well, I can't even see how I would do that. Like as if they're, I don't know. I mean, to me, I know this is going to sound like a religious thing, but God's way bigger than we are.
Absolutely.
There's so much that can happen that we can't even fathom it. Like
Absolutely.
I would say most of the things that have happened in my business have happened without me trying to make them happen.
Mhm.
You know?
I mean, I could not be more in agreement with you. Every business I built, I'm on my sixth, every one,
Wow.
God has ordained the steps. Where I dreamed about it and I thought about it and I wrote, what I wanted. I never knew how it was going to happen. I never knew how it was going to get there. I know as you could, I could tell story after story after story after story about how God just worked things out. It was just,
Well, and it was you're not having to be the one to figure it all out. Is
yes,
the part that you and I both have in common is we don't hold it like, well, gosh, now I have to figure all this out. We don't hold it that way. And
no,
so if nothing else, if your people are listening, write it as big as feels true. Like I remember one time I wrote that I want to be a $35 million company. And somebody said to me, why stop at 35 million? And I said, because that's as much as I can hold in my consciousness right now. And it was so funny because the next day I met a company that was 35 million and they were going to 100 million. And I was like, okay, funny, like
right.
funny.
I
But
know sometimes it
okay,
does show up in a humorous
yeah.
way. It
Well, and it was
does.
also like, don't worry, once you get to 35 million, I'll get you to 100 million. It was like
Mhm.
that. It was the message that I felt. So I don't think people should write just anything down. It should be something they sincerely want.
Right.
I sincerely wanted a scalable business. I sincerely wanted parents, teachers, administrators, and students all on the same page.
Mhm.
Like you have to have your heart in it for it to be
Absolutely. Oh, I love this. I love this conversation. So how many hours do you work in your business or how many hours do you work a week?
I work a lot of hours. My kids are all grown.
Mhm.
With the COVID, I'm here, but more than that, I love it. And I
Mhm.
remember reading a piece about life work balance, and it was really interesting, and I loved it. It said it isn't about balancing the number of hours that you work and the hours that you rest. It's more like, are you living these hours that give you fulfillment?
Yes.
So I don't even look at the clock most of the time. And then when I do, I stop. Like if there's a part of me wearing down or feeling unconnected,
Mhm.
I know to stop. One time, one of my kids, when she was living at home still, she said to me, Mom, I wish I had your work ethic. And I said, you already do. And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, you stay up all night to play video games. And she's like,
Yes.
That's
That's your
fine.
passion.
Yeah. And I said, when you find the right work, you won't be looking at the clock going, when can I stop doing this?
Oh,
So
you're so right. I really believe that too. And I think what you said a couple of great things in there. One is when you are doing what you love, what is the saying? You'll never work a day in your
right,
life. I think there's
right.
a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you said, I know when to stop. Like I know when my energy, there are so many times that I feel like I'm pushing that boulder or things just aren't lining up for the day or things just seem like they're a struggle that day. I
Mhm.
just push away and I just take a step back and I take time. And I think it's important to recognize that as an entrepreneur
Mhm.
so that you don't keep pushing, because really the results aren't going to happen in those moments anyway.
No, because you're coming from a kind of a darker place or something,
Yes,
and it's not aligned with who you're designed to be. So I know that when I'm aligned with my work, I have almost boundless energy for it. And
absolutely.
I think that's really true for most people. And when they're not feeling boundless energy, the question they should be asking is, do I need to change my life or my work or
Mhm.
my relationship or something? Because there's a misalignment there somewhere.
Oh, I think that's so true. And the other thing too, Judy, as you're going through your business and you're growing your business, have you found that the level of clients that you're working with now are completely different from when you started?
Um, A couple of ways I would say yes. Like I mentioned earlier, I asked for people to come to me that are ready for this work, because this work is
Mhm.
not conventional. And it's even based on a very specific type of psychology. And it is actually where culture evolution is converging. Like somebody came to me one time who was a futurist, and he said, "Do you know that you're doing a teal culture model?" I was like, "I don't even know what that is."
Hmm.
And then I read up on it, and it's exactly what we were already doing, but we never called it teal. We called it responsibility-based culture. But it was
Mhm.
where power is decentralized, and people are sharing power, and there's purpose and value based, and all
Mhm.
these common factors. So I know not everybody's ready for the evolution of what's going on in the world, and some people are really hungry for it. So
Mhm.
what I notice is that that's a daily prayer for me, is to send me the people who are ready. So I'm finding more readiness. And I
Mhm.
also have, one of our visions right now is to do our mission in partnership with other like-minded, like-hearted thought leaders and change agents. And some of them are showing up in ways that I had not anticipated. Like I thought that they were going to be partnered with me with my system. And now some of them are saying, well, I'll come in and build a program under your system that is for this audience. That's
Mhm.
real thought leadership, where we're two people working on something, or create a third thing that's bigger than both of them.
I love
Uh,
that.
so yeah, so I would say yes to most of that. That my customers are becoming more conscious. They're showing up more conscious. So are my partners.
Mhm.
Hopefully that continues.
No, I love what you're saying. And I actually, when you had filled out the form for this podcast, so I could get all the information I needed from you, one of the things that did jump out to me is you talked about employer, employee, you talked about leaders and teams, and it really eliminating that better than, I'm here and you're
Yeah.
here. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that's such a valuable thing. Collaboration is such a big thing right now in business. And I think that that's an important, that's really kind of what you're talking about
Well, it's interesting because it's not only what's needed in business, it's what's been needed in the world.
in the world.
It's
Mhm.
even kind of yin yang. It's even kind of male female. Collaboration needs to be part of the driven focus. Like the driven focus is more that masculine side of us. That's
Mhm.
all part of business. But if we don't temper it with care and consideration for each other, I see it in people wanting to prioritize individualism over community, or community over individualism, and it's
Mhm.
both needed.
Right.
So what I see happening in the world right now is that you're describing win, lose, and zero sum when you talk about people that are doing, up, down, top down, power over, power under dynamics, and it's both sides are part of that. Even the person playing power under is
Mhm.
part of that problem, and the person playing power over. So all of that's win, lose. And what I see happening in the world right now is a lot of win, lose energy is holding on with a death grip. And then there's other people that say, I don't like this win lose. I don't like this zero
Mhm.
sum. I don't really believe anybody wins, even the ones that look like they're winning. And they want something different, but they haven't yet landed on what that something is. So I hope I'm answering what you're asking. Is
Yeah.
that's I think that's inbred in me. I have an inclusive gene, I think, in my body. I've always wanted everybody. That's why my whole mission is about a world where all people love their
Mhm.
lives. And you can't really want that and want win lose.
Mhm.
So for me, how do I help include the employer and the employee? How do we include the adults and the children? It's
Mhm.
most people don't think that's even possible, but it is.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it is. And I do think that is the direction of our culture and the direction of our world. And I think also as you talked about inclusion, and as barriers are being broken down even worldwide, and the internet has had a lot to do with that, and technology has had a lot to do with that. The entire world, it has shifted, and there is more collaboration. I think there is more empathy. I think people are more open to building relationships. I don't think anything about putting another coach on here and having a conversation with them and letting them share their value and their expertise, because there's enough for everybody and then some, right? And so when you talk about win lose, I kind of think about competition
Yeah.
versus collaboration.
Yes, and that kind of gets down to the heart of what I do in my work, but it's applicable to all the business owners and
Mhm.
leaders out there, is that it's about how do we shift into the conditions and conversations in which people can be their best? Because what we do instead is we create all these conditions and conversations where people go into shame, worthlessness, inferiority complex is what our our psychology model is
Mhm.
based on. And when that happens, that's where we have all this I'm right, you're wrong. I'm good, you're
Mhm.
bad. I'm going to do war with you. I'm going to do isms with you. I'm going to even do it all to myself. I'm going to do drug addiction, obesity, all kinds of stress and
Mhm.
disengagement. All of that comes from that same core place. And most people don't realize what do we need to change so that that stops being what is driving everything. Like the reason you can say, I don't feel threatened by another consultant coming on here, and I believe that there's plenty, is because you have a healthiness in your ego, because the ego is a good thing if it's a healthy ego.
Mhm.
And your healthy ego says, I love creating other leaders. I love creating other success in other people, because when I do it for you, I'm doing it for me. Like we're all
Mhm.
one. And so I do think that it is a reflection of you're not living in worthlessness or inferiority complex, right? Most people don't even know how much they're mired in inferiority complex.
No, oh, that's so true. That's so true. And yes, you're absolutely right too. When you said, oh, you love, creating success in other people and you love doing that. I think about, my husband says frequently, you care more about your clients' results than you do your own. Well, yes,
Sometimes, yeah.
to a degree. I just still want to make a living, but yes,
Well, on your sixth business, I don't think it's hurting you any that you love helping other people, because each of them
and
are
they've all
important.
been, all except the first one, have been helping other people. I've been in coaching, really, even though this is my coaching and consulting business since 2010. I've been coaching in all of my other business, health clubs and weight loss and training. And I've been doing this for almost, I don't know, 27 years or something. So it's ingrained in me. And I've always wanted to help other people and help
Well, it's
people be their
aligned with
best.
it's a core value for you,
It is. It
because that's
absolutely
what
is.
another thing that makes it easy, because it's just who you are,
Mhm.
and I love really when we identify our core values, because it just spurts us up to like our best.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. And it feels very natural for us too. We don't really
yes,
have to work at it. It's just something we
right.
do. And oh my goodness, this has been such great conversation. We've gone longer than I actually thought we would, but this was so good. I wish we could go even longer. You have
Well,
so much value.
I think we just need to connect more, is what it's telling me.
I think
'Cause I
so.
feel the same. This has really been great.
No, I love it. So, okay, give two great tips for people building a consulting and coaching business, practice, company, whatever you want to say. What would be two of the most valuable things you feel? I know we've shared a lot of gold here, but can you sum up a couple of great tips?
Well, I know when you asked that on the forum, I put them down thinking you were asking like, what are things that have worked for you? But I think these could work for other people. So I'm going to say this. I remember one time I was at an E for E meeting, which was a networking group, a local
Hmm.
networking group. And there was somebody that came in and had this big, long form of all these questions around marketing. And I
Hmm.
remember being like so many ahas going off in my head. Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to have a written marketing plan. This was years and years ago. I didn't know I was supposed to have this. And it really convicted me. So I went home and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create this same sort of a survey assessment, very detailed,
Hmm.
asking people questions about their culture practices. Because so we have this survey now that it's a really valuable tool, because when the people take it, they're not even aware of how much awareness they're going to get from the questions. And then like they might be going through a list of 29 challenges and they're checkboxing them, and all of a sudden they're like, man, I'm checkboxing a lot of these challenges.
Right.
And even that is like a wake-up call. And then they're
Hmm.
checkboxing like, I want these desired behaviors in my workplace, but I don't have them. Like, do we have no gossip? Nope, don't have that one. And so the first part is that it teaches them who they are. It's like when you get your blood work back and you're like, oh gosh, I have high cholesterol, I have a
Hmm.
fatty liver, I have this, I have that.
And you
And
didn't even know.
we didn't even know. I know. Yeah,
Hmm.
it can be bliss at times. But and then it also gives us a really rich starting place to talk to them, because in the olden days when we had sales calls between people, we spent a lot of time getting to know what their problems were and all of that.
Hmm.
We just kind of shorthand that by
Hmm.
having people give us all that detail, so that when we sit down with them, they're ready to talk about all of it. And so I would recommend that whatever business you're in, whether you make a small survey or a long survey, make sure that your intention is to wake people up to what they may not know that they don't know.
Ask them the right questions.
Ask them the right question. We just recently took our survey, which was designed for one executive, and we made it so that it could get a minimal amount of feedback from all of the people at the management level, all of the people at the staff level, so that when we send our free report to the senior executives, we can give them, oh, and by the way, your management level, their top 3 challenges that they all agree on is this, and the top 3 challenges for your frontline staff are these things. So that, because a lot of times what happens is the frontline staff don't even feel heard by the executives, and vice versa. So it creates some awareness organizationally. So that's one tip for sure.
Okay, well, I want to just interject to that because, oh my goodness, that is gold, gold, gold. One of the things I talk about is before I get on a sales call, right, with someone, I really kind of put them through the grinder, and I ask questions, and I've had people get on calls and say, oh my gosh, just filling out your form made me realize how much I don't know and how much I need. And so it really is about, it's really letting them, it's uncovering for them what their needs are versus you pushing and saying, you need this, you need this.
Self-discovery.
Yes, it is. And they are selling themselves. It's like really your form, your survey, your assessment, whatever is pre-selling your services without you really having to do the work.
100%.
Such a powerful tip. Thank you for sharing that. I hadn't thought about that. All right, what else do you have for us?
I'm trying to think of what I wrote on the form now. I don't know if it applies because I can't remember it. I would say use interns. I would say
that was a great tip. Yes.
Beginning, they don't, like, I've had PR interns, social media interns, marketing interns. Recently I got a data scientist intern. I didn't even know what a data scientist was until recently. I've had phone app developers, because we've had, phone apps built. There's almost everything that you could want is available. And sometimes you don't get great people, but a lot of times you do.
That's great. And are they paid interns or are they not paid?
Ours are usually not when we've used them.
Okay.
Because in a situation where our budget's already so stretched, we're just giving them the experience. And a lot of them love that because they have to do it for school, for college, or they have to do it because they're switching careers and they need some real world experience on their resume. So you can pay them. That's even a better thing if you want to, but we have found like there's just so many because of the pandemic. And so when we had the recession, there were a lot of interns. And then when everything got better, there weren't a lot of interns. So sometimes it's kind of dependent on what's going on around you.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because it is something that I suggest especially when I'm working with like small businesses. And also when I was building businesses, I used interns a lot. I would go through the college and get interns. And I have to say some of my best employees that later became employees came because they were interns for me first. And it's kind of like, now I did pay my interns, but it was, you don't have to pay them at the same rate because they're learning and so you can you can basically train them for less money and then you can bring them on as an employee and they're already trained. So it's very powerful.
You've already screened them. You already know that they're hardworking and that their values fit your culture and all of that. Yeah,
absolutely.
I really recommend that. I think it's a game changer for some people that are still like maybe their early days or something.
That's great. What was that website again that you've used?
It's called Internships. And if you don't put the S on the end, it won't take you to the right place.
Okay, great.
And then when people go on internships.com, they get to a site called Chegg. And it's really for students that are looking for internships, but there's a little button you can push for I'm an employer.
Okay.
And it takes you through that process. But if anybody's listening and they want that, they can reach out to me and I'll send them in a written form, how I fill out those forms so that they know how to do that and don't have to like just try to figure that out.
Okay. Well, we'll put all of your information and how people can connect with you. Of course, Judy is on LinkedIn. I don't know if you're on Facebook or not, Judy, but I know she's big on LinkedIn and you can find her there. But we'll put all of her information in the show notes. And you'll be able to reach out to her and get a hold of her and just connect with her. She is such, you can hear, she is such a wealth of knowledge, not just building her own success, but just what she pours into other people and just her heart and her love for what she does. You can hear her passion. You can hear how brilliant she is and how passionate she is about what she does. So Judy, thank you for what you are doing out there in the world. I love it. And I'm blessed to know you. I wish we had more time that we could connect, and but you're just doing some great things, and it's been such an honor to have you on this show.
Gosh, Shan, thank you. And I feel the same about you. And I feel very grateful that we had this exchange. It was really fun.
Thank you so much.
And I think you're brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So see, there's no competition. You don't have to compete, right? So I love this, but thank you for being here. And everyone, thank you for being here and tuning into another episode. And until next week, God bless you. You have an amazing day. Bye-bye.